Hello and welcome to this edition of Age of Truth TV. I'm Lucas Alexander in Copenhagen, Denmark. It's the 27th of August 2021, and our special guest today is a Gnostic and Telistic shaman. He's an American researcher, lecturer, and author of the acclaimed book, Not in His Image, a fascinating interpretation of the Gnostic writings from the Nag Hammadi library, found in Egypt in 1945, that reveals eye-opening truths about Gnosticism in an ancient civilization, archon dominance, and the secret history of the world. He has now updated and reissued the book with fascinating new material, very relevant of today in regards to the world situation. What is reality? What is illusion? We will be discussing it today with John Lamb Lash. Good evening from Copenhagen, Denmark, and a very warm welcome to our special guest joining us today, the great John Lamb Lash, joining us from Galicia in Spain. It's wonderful to have you on, and it's great to welcome you to Age of Truth TV.
An exceptional pleasure, Lucas. I was thinking about meeting you, and myself said to me, or I said to myself, however way you like it, I better put on a little flash on the lash so I look a bit stylish to keep up with this man. So I put my best vest on, and here we are, and it's a great pleasure to be with you.
Oh, great. Oh, absolutely wonderful. That's so much fun. I hope we can meet one day in person.
Yeah, well, you know, the virtual is the virtual, but much rather be there in person, but we'll do fine.
It's not that far. You are in Spain.
I'm in northern Spain, actually.
I'm sure we can have more than one discussion for sure, because you have so much information to share with people, and it's nice to finally have you on the show. So before we begin our talk and discussion with John Lamb Lash today, let me start off by reading a description of the new updated, reissued version of Mr. Lash's book, Not in His Image, which describes the material very well and the book very well. In a nutshell, obviously, of course, and then we can go into the discussion. Since its initial release to wide acclaim in 2006, Not in His Image has transformed the lives of readers around the world by presenting the living presence of the wisdom goddess as never before revealed, illustrating that the truth of an impactful Gnostic message cannot be hidden or destroyed. With clarity, author John Lamb Lash explains how a little-known Messianic sect propelled itself into dominant world power, systematically wiping out the great Gnostic spiritual teachers, the Druid priests, and the shamanistic healers of Europe and North Africa. Early Christians burned libraries and destroyed temples in an attempt to silence the ancient truth tellers and keep their own secrets. Not in His Image delves deeply into ancient Gnostic writings to reconstruct the story early Christians tried to scrap from the pages of history, exploring the richness of the ancient European pagan spirituality, the pagan mysteries, the great goddess, Gnosis, the myths of Sophia and Gaia. In the 15th anniversary edition, Lash doubles down on his original argument against redemptive ideology and authoritarian deceit. He shows how the Gnostics clearly foresaw the current program of salvation by syringe and places the Sophianic vision of life centrally in the battle to expose and oppose the evil agenda of transhumanism, making this well-timed update more relevant than ever. So this is clearly extremely fascinating stuff and takes a bit of concentration to put all of the puzzle pieces together to understand all of it, understand a larger picture which you have been writing about and the interpretation of the Gnostic writings that you have done and which now is well updated in your new version of Not in His Image. But I think we must begin the first part of this talk with a basic background description of a few things and concepts for those of our viewers who are not so well researched into what Gnosticism, Gnosis, Sophia, and the Archon Kingdom is all about, and for those who do not know your work so well yet. So please, first of all, tell the audience how this incredible journey began for you. Why did you choose to write Not in His Image in the first place 15 years ago in 2006 when it originally came out? And why did you choose to republish it now in 2021?
That's quite a question. I was looking forward to this encounter because I know you're an excellent interviewer. I'll give you the short form. You see, I grew up as a child in a little town called Friendship, Maine, a beautiful fishing village on the coast of Maine. And I was very privileged to have the beauty of nature around me. And naturally, already at the age of 3 or 4, I went out into that exquisite beauty of that place, which I have to say, the harbor of Friendship, Maine is one of the most beautiful places I've seen, and I've traveled a lot in the world. So I was drawn to the beauty of nature. But when I returned to my family, my situation, and the township and the people, they were dominated by a fundamentalist Christian sect. And I realized quite early on, without being able to, I didn't know the word heretic, but I realized that I was a heretic because something in me instinctually could not accept the biblical indoctrination of that little clan of people in that small town. And so I had the ideal opportunity, on the one hand, to go into the beauty of nature, and I spent hours and hours alone, walking the coastline, swimming out to the islands, walking in the woods. But I also had the opportunity to confront something which happens to be a massive problem for humanity. And that is the problem of the Judeo-Christian belief system. So basically, I struggled with that. And, you know, children very often know that something is wrong, don't they? They have such an innate sense of truth. They know in the family, in the community, something is wrong, but they can't define what it is because they don't yet have the syntax of the brain developed. So it took me until I was about 16. And I was already rebelling and like not going along the program. But at the age of 16, I discovered Nietzsche. And Nietzsche showed me what I was already thinking and gave me the language. And at that moment, I undertook a great act of defiance. I described this in the original foreword to Not in His Image, which was that I was going to take down this belief system. And that was actually a challenge that I assumed totally on my own when I was 16 or 17 years old. And that led eventually to many steps. to writing not in his image. And there was a secondary factor that led me to write the book. And that is the factor of the paranormal or supernatural. Now, I personally believe that it is normal to have paranormal experiences. I do. And I believe that all of us from an early age may have this presence of something supernatural or paranormal. But the important thing is to hold on to that experience and develop it into clarity so that you actually know what it is that is impacting you. Well, I had tremendous forces of the supernatural impacting me from the age of 4. And through my life, I had what you might call spontaneous mystical experiences. One of those was the Kundalini event. You know what Kundalini is, right?
Sure, absolutely.
I think it's generally known in more enlightened circles today what Kundalini is. You know?
And it's often, of course, talked about in let's say, when you do tantra, sexual tantra, but of course this can also happen. It's to do with the spine, and represents the snake.
That's right. Well, I won't say necessarily that I do tantra. That's a dicey subject. We could talk about that in another interview.
Sure.
But I can assure you that tantra did me. Tantra did me big time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you know, there's various books about raising the Kundalini. The most well-known classic book is called The Serpent Power by Sir John Woodruff. And he talks about the yogic technique of raising Kundalini through the chakras to the head chakra, right? But what is perhaps less well-known are testimonials, such as my own, of spontaneous eruptions of Kundalini.
And does that mean that you feel like shaking or tremor or something, that it suddenly happens in the body, like a sudden, like little explosion in there? Because I've heard about people who has those experiences.
It may not be so uncommon, but unfortunately we may not know about it, Lucas, because when it happens, it's incomprehensible. It happened to me when I was 16 years old, and it lasted for 6 months.
What does that mean? That you have those constant eruptions or explosions?
Not continually, but over a period of 6 months, it kept coming back and coming back and coming back over and over again. Now, bear in mind that I was a young boy in high school living in a town in Maine. And back in those days, you didn't even know what yogurt was, not to mention yoga.
All right.
I was like, what's yoga? What's Kundalini? What are they? I had no idea. It came on. It is a cold electric fire. And it generally comes right up the spine like a lightning bolt. And it was terrifying. It used to happen to me at night. So I would be sleeping in my bedroom, totally innocent teenage boy in high school. And then suddenly I would go lucid. You know, everyone knows what a lucid dream is. Well, suddenly I would be lucid. And the first thought that comes often in a lucid dream is, wow, I can do anything I want. I think I'll go to the moon. I think I'll go look up, what's her name? Some sexy actress. I can go anywhere and do anything I want in the whole universe.
Not the goddess Sophia, but Sophia Loren, maybe.
Yeah, right. Or Scarlett Johansson, whoever, right?
yeah, of this day and age.
Whoever tickles your fancy, she doesn't tickle mine. But anyway, and then something very strange happened, my friend. I'm laying in bed, I go lucid, and I think, okay, now I'm just going to go for it, man. This is incredible. I know I'm having a dream and all power is mine. And the minute I thought that or said that, I was paralyzed.
Sleep paralysis, is that what you mean?
Yeah, but I was awake. I woke up from the lucid dream in my bed, and I am paralyzed. I guess they call it sleep apnea, right? And it was terrifying because
Sleep paralysis, some people call it.
right, I couldn't breathe, and I thought it was going to kill me. This went on, as I say, not continually, but many times over 6 months, and it entirely transformed my personality. Up until that point, I had been like, I was an A+ student in school. I was very popular, and it turned me into an introvert. It turned me into this sort of James Dean, sulking, strange, aloof creature, you know? And then I started on this long, long journey to understand what is the actual presence of the supernatural and how it works upon us. And that also led to the culmination when I began to write Not in His Image.
So would you say that you got some like downloads? It's a computer term, but from some universal connection in some kind of way, or how did you interpret it at this time? Because would you say that this Kundalini experience that happened over 6 months was connected, or is connected generally, to the ability to lucid dream?
Certainly was. I think lucid dreaming is a portal toward the supernatural. But you see, the supernatural, of which I talk about a lot, the paranormal and the supernatural. And by the way, I want to add a qualification. In my experience of the supernatural, which has been ongoing for the age of 4, although there are shocking and frightening moments that can arise, I am profoundly convinced that the supernatural is entirely benevolent. Entirely. Yeah. And the Aeon Sophia, our planetary, is entirely benevolent. So in those cases in which people experience demonic forces or things like this, I do not consider that, this is just my humble view, to be, as a Gnostic, and Gnostics are not humble, okay, I consider that to be the dementia of the human psyche. The garbage and the confusion of the human psyche makes it appear that the supernatural has evil in it. There is no evil in the supernatural. It is nothing but love, beauty, and freedom. But the question is, how do you get there in a steady, clear way? You see? So you have to learn how to navigate in the supernatural. Now, getting back to your question, very pertinent. Download. Did I receive a download? I think there are cases in which people have a Kundalini event and they do receive some kind of download. One famous example of that, is Philip K. Dick, the science fiction writer who wrote Blade Runner and many other novels.
All right.
Yeah. Minority Report is based on Philip K. Dick. And he describes in March, I think it was, of 1977, how he was like hit by a Kundalini event and he got a download. My view, my assessment is that you can have it with or without a download. It can just be a wake-up call.
Would you say that this Kundalini event is, well, like a little bit orgasmic that some people talk about? It feels like that in the body, or is it different from that?
Well, there are two ways that Kundalini activates. One is by the spinal channel, and that can be unpleasant. I mean, it is ecstatic, but it's also terrifying. It can be really terrifying. And it's like being hit literally by a lightning bolt. And you are being hit by a lightning bolt. You're being hit by the lightning of the Aeon Sophia, the planetary mother, because her body, which is the earth, is surging with Kundalini. It's called Maha Kundala, which means the big serpent, the big spiral. So she has Maha Kundala, which is in the telluric properties of the earth, and you have Kundalini, which is like the teeny weeny yellow bikini. You have the little version, you have the little pinch of her massive Mahakundala, you see? But there's a better way to get it, which I prefer. And that is what I call the meltdown. So you refer to sex, and I will graciously follow your lead. Okay? In the best of sex, and this is the best of the best, you have an orgasmic meltdown with your partner. The orgasm goes through you, you tremble, and if you surrender to that trembling, then you just melt into such a soft, beautiful cushion of ecstasy. You can also have Kundalini in that form. It's a cellular meltdown. So it doesn't necessarily take the channel of your spine, which is kind of a very severe route for it to take, but it actually diffuses the entire cellular network of your body, and you feel as if you are a lotus covered with dew.
Some, let's say, sexual therapists or sexual healers or whatever they are, they can actually, some of them have the ability to activate the Kundalini in somebody's spine. But we also know that you have to be very careful in doing that, because that could actually, well, disable people in a way, right? You have to be very careful. This is a very powerful thing and people should be wary of, they should really know what they're doing.
Totally agree. Of course, there are quite a few different techniques and books on tantric sex, things of this sort. I don't do tantric sex as such. I have never been attracted to pursuing those rituals, or the rituals, for instance, of the Kama Sutra and so forth, the various positions. It's not for me. I find it very stilted and not spontaneous. But in really genuine, affectionate sex, you will get to the Kundalini melt. But there is a discipline involved, and it is definitely dangerous to meddle with this power without knowing exactly what you're doing.
But do you know what activated your Kundalini? Was it something from, let's say, another realm? Was it somebody that you were close to or that you knew, but you just didn't know that they actually activated it? Or why do you think this happened? Do you feel that you were a chosen one, that this was a tool to make you go on a certain path, the path that you're on now?
No, I think it was an effect of my adolescent libido.
Must have been quite aggressive, huh?
My libido, I don't know how you would measure it, but at the time that I was an adolescent, it was very high, still is. And I lived in a very repressive environment. And I wanted nothing more than to just be intimate with a girl, to have flesh on flesh, to have the kisses, to have the juices. I wanted nothing but that, and it was not allowed. There was a big taboo. So I'm certain that was one factor. But in another way, I could say, in retrospect, that it was a way that the goddess chose to get to me.
A kind of a spiritual awakening in a way.
Yeah, to lay her power on me and brand me in a way with her power.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, this led you on a fascinating path, and you started researching a lot, and you are an encyclopedia of knowledge, really, about the ancient texts, and you've been going really into studying the Nag Hammadi texts discovered in Nag Hammadi in Egypt in 1945, and there's so much we want to get into there. But if you just want to describe to the viewers that may not know too much about this, how would you describe Gnosis and Gnosticism?
Gnosis, which simply means knowledge, but actually it means a special kind of knowledge. It means really a knowledge of, first of all, the source of life. You know the source. You don't believe in it. You don't make believe. You know the source. That's possible in Gnosis. The second is a knowledge of the human mind, the intellect and the psyche, and how they are designed to work. Because you can operate your mind and your emotions and your intention, that's the trinity of the human being, if you know how it works, like any other machine. Imagine trying to drive a farm machine that harvests corn if you don't know how the machine works, you see? So we have been designed by our divine parents, Sophia and her counterpart, Thelete, in a particular way. So Gnosis is the path of learning where you actually learn how your mental and psychic functions are optimally designed to work, okay? And the third aspect, I guess, would be that you learn in Gnosis to see the big picture here through the narrative, the fallen goddess scenario, which is the biography of the earth. You learn the biography of the earth. For instance, this name, Sophia, which means wisdom, I say Sophia rhymes with desire, okay? I like that. So Sophia distinguishes it from just a girl's name, Sophia, right?
All right. Okay. We can use that one if that's what you prefer.
Yeah, I do prefer that, but I don't impose anything on anyone. So when you learn the story that she is a galactic scale star goddess, she existed before she became the earth. And you learn how she designed the human species, then how she turned into this planet. You learn that whole story, and contained in that story is the story of the archons, the deceivers.
And we definitely want to get into that because we've been talking about that so much on this show throughout the years, and definitely you can explain it more thoroughly than anybody else, I assume. But I just want to ask you a question about knowing and gnosis and Gnosticism. So is there a basic knowing that everybody has that can be applied to each individual's reality? A knowing that can only be true for each unique person, I would expect, and therefore very different from another person's knowing. Or, how do we know that what we know is real knowing and not an archontic deception?
Well, those are two big questions packaged into one.
We'll take one and then we'll take the other, huh?
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay.
No, there is nothing like your truth. No, there is no truth that is original to one particular person. No, as a Gnostic, I stand strongly against that view. See, the beauty of truth is that it is unity. Truth is unity. And the Gnostics stress this very strongly. And there are different ways to approach it, but the basic way is to say all truth comes from knowledge of the source. And since there can only be one source of the human species and of this reality, then all truth converges at that one source. So why would you even want to go find some truth that is unique to you, your truth, my truth. There's much more joy and pleasure in sharing a truth that is integral to all of us. That's where the power of truth comes into play.
But what if you tell me something and you tell me it's a knowing?
A knowing, what is a real knowing? Basically, you're asking, well, it's something that can be tested. A belief cannot be tested. You see, a belief is just something that someone will believe no matter what proof you give them. Consider the situation today. Look at the people walking around on this planet who believe that there is some kind of microbial pestilence in the air that anyone can get. And it's extremely contagious and it's extremely deadly, right? But when you give them the obvious proof that that is not so, they don't even consider it. They don't consider proof, but truth is based on proof, and truth develops that proof. That's the difference. You have to prove what is true.
But what if you tell me something and you tell me, I know this? I've had many people saying that to me, for example, also in interviews, saying, I know this because it's a knowing. I feel this, and maybe it's not, this is just an example, but maybe it's not my knowing, maybe it's not my gnosis, maybe I don't feel like that, and I can just listen to what that person is saying. So how can there be a universal truth, a united truth, something we are together in understanding? I mean, this is, it is, a lot of people say, I know, and then you say, oh, really? Well, please. How do we get the proof then?
It's simple, Lucas. You simply need to factor in the difference between personal and transpersonal. So sure, on the personal level of you or me as an individual, you know that you feel that in a unique way personally. But on the transpersonal level, where we are all members of this species, it's different. It's different at that level. That's where unity and concordance of knowledge happens. And gnosis is the practice that leads to that unity of knowledge.
So that means that a lot of people, we've also talked about this, that the pineal gland has been calcified, and the connection with the heart chakra and the abilities that human beings had in the past that could maybe even move objects with the power of thought. And we had much more, maybe greater abilities than we are aware of now because of the dumbing down and all of the chemicals in the water and the food and chemtrails, you name it, all of this. But basically, if there is a knowing, this intuition, this feeling of a connection with the universe, why can't people tap into that a little more, understanding or feeling, getting the full picture of what is going on? For example, right now in the world, during this horrendous world crisis, to know and to see that this is a grand, deception, orchestrated basically to feed on human beings' emotions. And there maybe we can get into the whole Archon realm as well. But I mean, why don't people get that so-called download or that knowing? It's like people have been detached from understanding or understanding, probably more.
They have been detached from understanding. You could even use the word deracinated, which means to tear something out at the roots. I am totally confident from my self-knowledge and that of people that I know well, that this innate knowing is present in everyone. And the innate knowing, if it is free, that is the key word, if it is free to grow and develop on its own terms, will lead to unity of truth, and it will lead to a transcendent view. The problem is there's a lot of interference with this innate, intend to destroy it. And there is a lot of mind control and religious indoctrination that interferes with the innate knowing. And this is the situation that we live in at the end of Kali Yuga. You see, there is an innate knowing, everyone has it, but it is under great risk and it is under nefarious attack. And facing that is the challenge of Kali Yuga.
And do you think it's under greater attack at the moment because of this Kali Yuga era and what's happening at the moment? Because more people are waking up, so they want to bombard us with more fear and terror. Basically, isn't that what it all comes down to?
It's as bad now as it's ever going to get, and yet, at the same time, there is no better moment to be alive than now.
Do you think that?
I do totally think that and feel that.
All right, that's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because this challenge, I call it the Soviet deceit, the Soviet deception, because you have to bring in the word Soviet, because it really is technocratic communism that's behind all this, okay? And so being hit, and everyone is being hit by this assault of the Soviet deception, there is no greater opportunity for humanity to come together and face the enemies of life than now. They are at their end game. They have played almost all of their cards. They have a few more to play coming in the next 6 months. But they are at their end game and they are desperate and they are running scared because, as you say, many people are getting on to their game. So we're in a fight for life. We're in a battle like none that has ever occurred in history before. And everyone has the opportunity to be a hero in this battle.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that this knowing and more people are waking up and probably, in a way, even without knowing it, getting into becoming more Gnostic? At least a lot of people in the truth movement are. And if you can even master that and understand it more, then maybe you can work with it in a better way and direct it to change your life and how you look at things, because the law of attraction is also a very important law, of course, and the power of thought. But would you say that clairvoyants, for example, are they Gnostics in a way when they get messages from the beyond or the above or wherever they get it from?
No. I stand guilty as charged, okay? I am hypercritical of a lot of things. That doesn't mean that I want to compete with anyone. It doesn't mean that I want to present myself as better than anyone. But I do know that the Gnostic intel and practice is the premium intel on this planet. It's the premium intel. Why? Because the knowledge of Gnosticism comes from intimate connection with the source of life, Sophia, the living planet. That's the source of all the knowledge and intel of Gnosticism. Now, people can have all kinds of fantasies. They can have all kinds of channelings from this and that. But unfortunately, it's just confusion at the end of the day, because it doesn't lead to that unity that we need, whereas the real power to beat this horrible event, you see? So I don't know if that is answering your question. I love your questions, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm really enjoying this. It's not easy to interview me, by the way. Some people don't even want to talk to me. Anyway.
Oh, really? I'm really thrilled to have this conversation. It's absolutely wonderful. No, I was going to say, if you were saying that maybe clairvoyance or channelers or something, that you don't really buy into that. For a lot of people, that is real. That is a real knowing for them, or a real message that they're getting from channeling, from feeling something, tapping into a part in the universe that a lot of people maybe don't have access to. But would you then say that archons could interfere with psychics or mediums or channelers or clairvoyants as well to give them mis or disinformation?
You could compare the archons to very clever and sadistic pedophiles. Now, one thing that a pedophile or a parasite who feeds on children knows is that children are very impressionable, and children love to pretend and make believe. And indeed, that is a quality inherent in the human species. It's a quality of make believe, of pretending and playing. And it's a beautiful quality if it's taken in the right direction. So we have theater and art, things of that sort. But the predatory, archontic parasites take advantage of that. They take advantage of the make-believe in people's minds. And yes, indeed, in my estimation, a lot of the channeled material and fantasies that people come up with are actually delusions inspired by the archons. But you see, the beautiful thing is you don't need any of that. You don't need any of that to find your way in life. You don't need to pretend that you're reaching into some other dimension of the cosmos. What you need is to live totally in this dimension, right here and right now. And if you can't live totally in this dimension, how are you going to know how to handle other dimensions? Excuse me, you see? And this dimension of reality is the dreaming of the Aeonic Mother, your divine mother. You're living in her dream. You're a character in her dream. And the most direct way to connect with her is to know that and to develop your role, knowing that you are a character in her imagination. You and I, sitting here today, are characters in the imagination of the Aeon Sophia.
And quite some characters, huh?
Yeah, well, it gets back to the issue of style, you know? And maybe this would be a helpful clarification. Style is really important in Gnosis, you see? Because wisdom and knowledge and transcendent knowledge and spiritual knowledge, whatever you want to call it, always has a style. So for instance, the Vedic teachings have a certain style. The Native American teachings about the earth and rituals of nature, that's another style. The Aztecs had their style. That was pretty wild. But likewise, the Zen masters of Japan have their style. It's all about style. And Gnosis is a particular style of handling this wisdom, very sophisticated and refined. It seems to appear probably largely intellectual, but it isn't. I can guarantee you, and I'm sure that my friends and allies and students will back this up, it's about 50% intellectual.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of style, is that why you're wearing these Ray-Bans or whatever they are, the dark glasses today?
Well, truth be told, and this is a personal matter, I have something with this eye, which is a kind of an occlusion of it. So it's veiled. And as a result of that, it disturbs the contrast between light and dark in my field of vision. For instance, if I'm out walking in the bright sunlight, it's very, it looks black to me. The contrast between light and black is irritating to me. It bothers me. So over the last couple of years since I got this condition, which is going away now, I've taken to wearing these glasses because it softens the light. Even this small light here, it's more comfortable to me.
All right.
then I got a bit attached because I thought, hey, I look pretty cool with sunglasses on. I think I'll keep them on. But, I can take them off too. It's no problem.
All right, there you are. Well, it was just that probably maybe some of the viewers would address it or ask, why is he wearing glasses? But it's good that we just covered that, huh?
Yeah, I wear them all the time, routinely. It doesn't have anything to do with looking like a rock star like you.
Well, I'm also a singer, an actor, so But that's beside the point. Anyway, that's great, and style is important if you are able to have your own personal style. It's fun. It's playful in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, style is such a terrible mess in our society, in our culture. When do you see on the street or in some public place a man or a woman, young or old, who just has style? And you just stop, and say, wow, that's genuine. We are so barraged by control, working through fashion and working through cosmetics and working through all these commercial systems that want to sell us something, that it's very rare to see someone has a genuine style. But getting back to Gnosis is a genuine style of cultivating wisdom. And it stands alone. It stands distinctly apart from age categories of wisdom or other things of that sort, you see. So
could we say, that was one of the questions about Gnosis and about the knowing. Could a knowing also be influenced by these parasitic archons, like maybe some clairvoyants or channels? Certainly not all, but maybe some. We've certainly heard about that as well. Well, deceivers working through people who are a shining light to some.
Yeah, that's called the Luciferic deception, right? In some people's minds. Listen, it's, in my experience, I'll just give you the brutal truth. I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico for a long time during the moment when the New Age movement was peaking, and Shirley MacLaine was there, and I've met a fair number of psychics and clairvoyants, and my assessment is that they are narcissists who want special attention. And that's about it.
Well, you tell them.
Just being honest.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
The beauty, Lucas, of this, to get back to the beauty of this, what I call the Sophianic vision of life. It is all about beauty. I can't tell you what the reactions I've had in 15 years since I wrote Not in His Image have been of two kinds, always of two kinds. First, people wrote me, I can't believe it. Reading your book has liberated me from 10, 20, 30, 40 years of religious indoctrination and mind programming through religion, particularly Judeo-Christianity. That's one of the messages I get all the time. And the other one is, I can't resist the story of Sophia. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And people are converted by the beauty of this myth and all that it can tell us about ourselves. And that is on the path to a unity. There's only one source of your life, and you're standing on it. Come on. Talk about waking up. The supernatural is all around you. She is supernatural. Beauty is supernatural. And planetary tantra and gnosis, as I teach it, is just bringing you into that mystery, bringing you into that power. That's my whole intention of everything I do.
Mm-hmm. So please explain to our viewers a little bit, because you know so much about this, obviously, about how the archons originated, Where did they come from? Why are they here? Why have they been allowed to feed on human beings' psyche and emotions and create havoc and global world dominance? I know there's a lot of questions, but did God, source, force, creator, allow this to happen, or did this just hijack this earthly realm within the matrix?
Oh, right. Another big package. I'll see if I can sort it out. I have to put on my Archon deflecting glasses now because they protect me from the Archons, right?
Yes, definitely. So please explain how the Archons originated first, and then we can go into more of the whole package I was delivering there.
I'll do my best. In the first place, to my knowledge, the Gnostic intel and the Sophianic narrative, the fallen goddess scenario, is the only body of knowledge that explains how the Archons originated. Now, people have been talking about the Archons for a long time, and I think I can take credit for introducing that term to the internet around 2002. Okay? I did that because when I brought out the Gnostic material on the website, medhistory.org, I made it my primary objective to explain the Archons. And here you get to a difficult point, and this is where some people fall off the bus. Because the Gnostic narrative, which is a myth, a sacred story explaining the origin of the earth, the origin of the human species, also explains the origin of the archonic parasites, the intruders, psychic intruders. And it explains it in a way that a lot of people don't like. Well, I won't say a lot, but some people are not going to like this explanation. And they'll pass at that point and go look for some
just bring it on. We are all for it here.
Sophia herself accidentally created the Archons. It was an accident, a cosmic anomaly, as they call it, an anomaly. It was something that she did not foresee and something she could not control. Now, this in itself is a difficult piece of intel for those to accept who have a program that a god, a deity, a divine being of her scale, which is the galactic scale, could make a mistake or could do something that produced unintended circumstances. So if you are still programmed by the notion that a god or goddess is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-controlling, you're not going to like this story. It's an entirely different story. But the beauty of it is, if you accept this story, you have empathy for the goddess in what happened to her in producing the Archons. See? By accident. And she produced the Archons due to her passion for humanity. The myth says that she inhabited the galactic core, which is where the aeons or Gnostic gods and goddesses lived, but she plunged out of the core. She's the fallen goddess. She left the core because her desire was so great to see her designer species, humanity, achieve its full potential. And she became involved in the experiment that she set in motion. This is a story that you can only take on board if you have empathy for the goddess. You see, this is a key, great key. So that's how they actually came about. And if you want to know the full story, you go to sophianicmyth.org, and there are the 9 episodes of the Sophianic myth, and you can receive them day to day. Or you can go to Nemata, which is my school, and you can also freely access all the 9 episodes. And also they are now available in an audio version, thanks to our elegant friend Yvonne, who lives down under. she recorded them so you can listen to them. You cannot know your role and responsibility in the fate of the earth if you don't know the story of the earth. And this is a requirement of Gnostic practice today, to know the story of the earth.
And the Archons was created, what, through smokeless fire? Is that how it was?
No, it was created by the impact that her plasmic current had in the galactic arms. You see, inside the core of the galaxy, there is pure living plasma. Luminosity that is alive. But outside, in the realm of the galactic arms, is a different environment. So the narrative says that she plunged from the core out into the external environment of the galaxy. And when she did so, she brought the impact of her own luminosity in such a way that it had a shattering effect. And this shattering effect produced this anomalous species, which is an inorganic cyborg insect-like species called the Archons. This is a great story, and it only comes out of the Gnostic sources. Now, I've done my best over and over again to tell this story and to get it across in a way that people can receive it, you see.
So, can you or do you have an idea or thoughts about why something you call an all-powerful God or goddess, Sophia, how can something good create something really evil and parasitic?
That question comes from a syntax in your mind where you have a polarity of good and evil. But I put it to you that if that is operating in your mind, and it is in many people's minds because it's inherent to religious indoctrination, then you can't really ask the right question. That's not the right question because it doesn't address the reality of the situation. You say, first of all, the Archons are not evil. The Gnostics never said that the Archons are evil. There is no evil, cosmic evil.
But the Archons are described as parasites, mind parasites, interdimensional in structure, right? And maybe they can take form through reptilian aliens or even possess a human, and therefore they are demons in Christian terms, and the jinns in Islam, and the chitahuri for African tribes and other words in other religions. So would you, I mean, if people can be possessed by these demon entities called Archons, which means ruler, a master, huh? Why would you not say that it's evil and evil was created if it is destroying us more or less, or possessing us to feel bad and feed on our emotions?
I understand this is a difficult question for many people, and it's probably one of the more difficult aspects of the Gnostic message to take on board. So I greatly appreciate you asking this. I'll give you my best answer. The essential way to view the Archons is that they are messengers of deceit. So their power is to deceive. And it is true that it is due to the Aeon Sophia, our mother goddess, that their power is even present in our reality. But it is due to us that we allow that delusion to affect us. We allow it to affect us. And that's not her responsibility. She's not responsible for what we allow. And you couldn't have a more perfect illustration of that than what is happening today in the world with this COVID deception. The authorities, which is the name for the Archons, say you must obey, say you must do this, say you must do that. And they say you must do it to protect others, and you must do it for public safety. But obviously, by obeying them, you are destroying your entire life. You're giving up everything that is precious to you. It's not Sophia's fault that we allow the authorities to do that to us. That's our fault, you see? So she put the archons into our reality. She's responsible for that. But we're responsible for how we handle them.
But if people are being deceived because they don't know what's going on, because they think it's for the best, because they're part of the illusion we were programmed since we were children, through the educational system, through just our family, everything we were brought up to believe. We think this is the truth. We even think the nature of reality is very different from what it really is. And some of the myths that you talk about, they may also be real, and we can also, use discernment there and ask if that's even the real nature of reality here. But certainly what you're saying, what's going on in the world right now, really describes big time what is going on, also with people getting these things that we can't mention any longer on the air. This is evil, John, isn't it? Evil was created.
No, evil was not created by the goddess. Evil is our doing. Evil is what human beings do when they fall under that delusion and then turn around and force that delusion on others.
So people will have to suffer before they wake up. Is that how it is? Or many people may even die because of what is going on at the moment and what will happen in the coming years. That's what we hear as well with whatever is put into people.
Well, we're looking at some big subjects here, and I realize as I speak that some of what we say may be incomplete or troubling or inadequate to people, but we're doing the best we can, and I think our Q&A is excellent. So I want to say to you, yes, the Gnostics foresaw this evil coming, and one of the most powerful things about Not in His Image is that it goes to the root of this evil. It exposes the root. The Gnostics knew what the root would be, the origin. They knew what the origin was. They didn't necessarily see the situation today, but they knew the root causes, which are master race ideology. That's the basis of technocracy, by the way. The technocrats like Elon Musk and other people consider themselves to be a master race. Let's face it. The second part of the root is the Messiah, the salvationist message. Well, someone is going to come and save us. That's a delusion of the archons. And the third is the nature of AI itself, the nature of archontic intelligence. So they saw all this at its core. They saw it at its core. They didn't necessarily predict exactly the circumstances of today. There is no better time than now to benefit from what they told us and to overcome these delusions that are implanted in our minds. Carlos Castaneda, whom I have great affinities with, is where a couple of old sorcerers hang around among the cactus and the vultures and having a great time. Mm-hmm. Carlos Castaneda talked about the flyers, and he was referring to his conception of the archons, which came to him through the indigenous wisdom of the Toltecs, okay? And he used the term foreign installation. He said, what the archons do is they install their own mind in our minds. So you have a foreign installation in your mind. Why are all these people obeying the authorities when any person with even a mediocre level of intelligence who looks at the facts can see that it's all a scam? Why are they obeying them? Because of fear and because they have a foreign installation in their minds.
Do you think it is because they're vibrating on a certain frequency level, or because they are being hit with a certain kind of, maybe a frequency of an AI frequency or something in order, and they receive that frequency where some of us, we just don't. I mean, it's difficult to fathom that people cannot see what is actually going on, why they believe it. Why do you think that is?
There's a lot of speculation about these frequencies and so forth. And there's no doubt that the covert military, three-letter agencies, and all the other sadistic, insane people who developed this technology certainly have weapons of that kind. This is a reality to take into account. But fundamentally, for me, that's not the key issue. That's not what liberates us. What liberates us is simply knowing that what we have been taught and told is wrong, and we need to correct it. And anyone can do that. A 10-year-old child can do that. So the danger is not in these frequencies and in sort of this invisible threat coming through the atmosphere. The danger is in what we have been taught and told. And when we break out of that, then we wake up, and then we can do something about defeating this horrific crime. Never been in the whole course of human history anything like this happened. And it ain't over yet. You're living as the crime is in progress. What an opportunity. There's no better time to be alive than now.
It would be wonderful if more people would wake up and see it so we could change it, because it's even more, let's say, confrontational for those of us who've been talking about this for years and been so-called awake, if you will.
Well, in my view, Lucas, it's not a quantity. I use the word quantum. What is required to change this event and turn life toward truth, freedom, beauty, love, innocence is just a quantum of power held by a certain number of people. Doesn't have to be a big quantity of power. Although I must say that there are certainly going to be mass uprisings, and there are mass uprisings now, popular uprisings, and this is a really good thing. However, the rage and grief and anger of people needs to be directed toward the proper target. You need to know who the enemies of life are. And the Gnostic method of learning shows you exactly who the enemies of life are.
And that's the archons, huh?
It is not the archons. It is those who have surrendered themselves to the delusion and illusion of the archons and are acting it out. If there were no human beings who acted out the deception of the archons, there would be nothing there. You see? We are the proxies, particular ethnic groups are the proxies of the archons. And this is also explicitly described in the Gnostic material. So it's not Sophia's fault that we allow that deception to happen. That's our responsibility. So we wake up from the deception and take responsibility for leading the world into what I call the beauty to come. There is beauty and freedom like we've never had it before. You know, one of the problems of the human animal is that we're creatures of habit. Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely.
And so we've had it good, especially in the Western world, you know, we've had it good. And unfortunately, if you take that for granted, something eventually is going to go wrong. In the beauty to come, on the other side of this crime, you will never take for granted any freedom, any pleasure that you have in life. You will treasure it for what it is, more than you ever did before.
Because you'll be slave bound?
No, I don't. I think I might not have gotten across to you in the right way. You will be free of enslavement.
Mm-hmm. But not take anything for granted.
Yeah, not take anything for granted, like the beauties of life. Like you can't even go out to a restaurant now with friends. You can't dance, you know. Think about how much we enjoyed those things and we took it for granted. When we get them back, when the recovery comes, we will treasure those things so much because we saw the possibility of losing them.
Is that the reason why they're doing this great reset? And they've probably been doing those great resets many times, right, in history?
Well, they're working on this program. The core, the current historical core of this great deception and crime goes back to 1666 and a certain figure called Sabbatai Zevi. You can go back further in history and track it back. I've tracked it back all the way to the origin, which is the Zadokim sect of the Hebrews. If you want to go the short route, track it ahead from 1666. And yeah, they've been working on it for a long time. But what they needed was archontic technology. And it's only in the last 30 years that they have the high-tech archonic technology, AI, robotic machines, surveillance machines. And so the technocrats, I call them the globalist overlords, in their delusion, in their dementia, they think that they can use these AI tools to totally control the whole world. But they can't.
And they actually have a robot called Sophia.
Yeah, I know. I did a talk on that a couple of years ago about the fraud of the robot Sophia.
Would you say that the archons are AI in a way?
AI should mean archontic intelligence, not artificial. You see, there's no such thing as artificial intelligence, my friend. Intelligence is not artificial. Look at yourself. Look at your fingerprints. Look at your ability to speak. Look at human culture. Look at the animal worlds. All intelligence is alive. Archontic intelligence is not alive, but they believe because they are the agents of the delusion of the archons that they can run the entire world on MS-DOS. And we ain't designed to run on MS-DOS. I've said this many times. We're beautifully designed in emotion and intelligence to run on another system, and Gnosis puts you on that system.
And the word archon means ruler and master, and also the word archon is part of words such as monarch, and
right.
hierarchy. Right? It's also part of it. But in ancient Greece, there were actually a group of rulers who were called archons, right? Archontes.
Yeah, they're the ones who condemned Socrates. They were the archons of Athens. In the language of that time, it simply meant the governor. The governors of Athens, there was a board of governors, the archons, the 40 archons. And they famously condemned Socrates because he was a wise ass and defied the authorities, you see.
And this is actually what is also on Wikipedia. If people look for the word archon, then you will go into ancient Greek culture and that civilization, and then you will see that the word archon was a group, a real group, right? I mean, living people.
Right, but they were not like the archonic agents of today. You see, the word archon has a legal meaning in government, and it also has this supernatural meaning, which is the alien parasite mind. So the archons today living among us are psychopaths and control freaks who are actually running on the archonic mindset. They don't have a human mind anymore. They are not humane. Look at this Soviet scam. Can you imagine anything more inhumane in your whole life? Everything about it is based on fear, constant fear, and stripping away the humanity of people. The common, simple humanity. That is the ultimate death blow of the archons. They are trying in their final game to take humanity down.